Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Hunting for Silver Linings. Today is Wednesday, December 23rd here in the U.S. and the Great Lakes region, Michigan, where I am. Startup Grind, Grand Rapids. I'm Corey Hart. For the Hunting for Silver Linings series, it got started early 2020 as the pandemic was moving west across the planet. And Declan here in Edinburgh, Scotland, was our very first Hunting for Silver Linings check-in. And so we're really excited that he's our very first re-check-in. So hi, Declan. Hi.
Hey Corey, how you doing? Yeah, it's an honor. No, I never knew I was the first until you mentioned. So I'm flattered.
Just you really helped us kick this off. And as serial entrepreneurs and ecosystem builders that Yorgo and I are, it's been a wonderful trip to be able to travel across the globe, have almost 80 different meetings with chapter directors and check-ins. And as we did so, we found some incredible consistencies in what people were asking. So, because at the end of every conversation, we always asked, what can the global startup grind community do for you? Because we're so busy asking that of our constituents of the flock, right? And we don't necessarily get asked that ourselves. So, Yorgo, hello.
Hi Yogo, hey, how you doing?
Good afternoon, Declan. My dear friend Hori, good morning. Everything is okay?
Yes, we just got started.
I hear you. Go ahead.
And so we don't necessarily have to cover all the same stuff that we did before. For those that are interested in learning about the system in Edinburgh, Scotland, we do have a video that can be consumed on the YouTube channel for Startup Grind. Now, but Declan, you just mentioned before we hit recorded that you celebrated the end of the year party. Can you explain a little bit what that was like for your community as it was all virtual, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Corey. And it was actually really positive experience. Obviously, very unusual compared to this time last year. So, yes, give everyone the context. So we use the platform called Reno, which I'm sure many people will be familiar with after this year. And the biggest thing that we were conscious of was creating as best as possible this community feel that you often get with parties. And during the year, and I'm sure the same for you, Corey and Yogo, all the events we've been using either Zoom or Bevy Virtual, which are great platforms. But if you think about the opportunities to interact, to make new friends, as is one of our values, to really get the opportunity to just have a bit more fun and be more social. That's absolutely lacking, we felt, the other platforms. So and I've got my co-director, Nick, to really thank for taking the lead on the event. And he did some awesome work around creating a series of mini interviews to go alongside the use the word networking, but that's completely wrong word. Mingling or social words. And so it's almost this combination of some of the top entrepreneurs in Edinburgh, especially during 2020, and this is something I was chat about today, in terms of entrepreneurs who have really taken 2020 in their strides, and not only have they during the pandemic, they've actually thrived, and these kind of success stories were also very inspiring. But yeah, going back to about 35, 40 people, which is epic, and go too long with the answer, so so for people you jump around this virtual platform to different tables, where you obviously speak in a circle of say 3, 4, 5 people. And we had marketing and messaging, we had talent and hiring a team, we had money matters, so speaking about investment, which I'm sure we'll chat about today. We even had smoking area and toilet queue, both of which are areas that scientifically are the most lively entertaining chats from parties. So yeah, that's a really long way of saying that we had a blast, and we'd recommend trying Remo for anyone who's keen to give it a go.
I think those the details that you were gleaning from your community at the party are exactly what we're going to be curious to learn.
Mm.
And maybe before we get into that, a little update on you personally. Are you up to anything different? Like, what's changed for you?
I think so. Yeah, the answer I'll give is almost cheating in the sense that many of it is the same as when we last spoke, but a lot of the projects are different. So for me personally, I always feel very grateful when I give this answer, because I'm always conscious that for many people, they've not had the flexibility, the freedoms that I've had to actually make some really great progress. I'm very pleased to say with all my projects. And of course, if you guys remember, I'm a man of many hats, and sometimes victory. But yes, so I have three main roles or projects. One of them is obviously Startup Grind, chapter director for Edinburgh. That's been really positive. We as a team have really built we as a team have built a great team, if that makes sense. So we've brought in a couple of new people to support us with social media, with partnerships, and also just community outreach. And we've been able to grow the community, at least we feel, over the last 6 months or so. And we've had one event per month, which, given the pandemic, given the chaos, we're very proud of. And some of the entrepreneurs we've had on have been truly inspiring, and we feel some of the top names in the ecosystem. So that's been really positive, and we're gearing up nicely with 2021. And I think the biggest outcome since we last spoke is we've really challenged ourselves with every event to make it different. And obviously that comes back to Remo and the end of year party. So that's number one. That's been a huge positive. Number two, as I'm sure you will remember, is my day job, which is for a tech startup called Backhug. And our mission is to help bad backs at home with our back therapy device. The changes is really the same as when we were speaking earlier. When this release of 3 units as of the end of last week, yesterday, as a matter of fact. So that's a huge change we made. It's becoming much more data driven, especially my role. So my role is business development, oftentimes marketing actually recently more than anything. Which I'd love to come back onto. And there's been quite a few specific projects there, which I'm excited to speak about. Third one, sorry, I know it's such a long answer, is my nutrition business. And since we last spoke, I've made some huge changes actually. And one of the biggest ones for me is honing in on my niche. And this will probably not be a surprise at all in terms of who I'm helping and who I want to help in future. And that's entrepreneurs, even specifically startup founders, tech entrepreneurs. The thing that I've noticed for me is how powerful an impact looking after your health and fitness can have. And this is obviously business related in terms of productivity, performance. I mean, as you think about scaling a startup, the potential for stress and burnout is, 10x the average person. So yeah, I'd love to speak more about that. I've got some big plans for 2021. So a long answer, but
Yorgo, do you have any immediate questions that you came to the meeting with?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is clearly on the entrepreneurial side, there is activity. People are coalescing together. They're interested in being in touch. Remember, in our early conversation, we anticipated and you highlighted very clearly the fact that the frame of mind was what distinguishes us from other groups or other organizations. And of course, the fact that everybody's ready to help. What is happening on the investor front?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Yoga. So with the investment front, it's been quite lively, I must say. Here in Scotland, one of the areas we pride ourselves on is social business. So businesses that are seen to not only be proactive about supporting positive causes, but actually they've built that into their products and services. So that's actually been very active. And in terms of investment, I think what we've seen is, as you would expect, a slowdown in terms of the number of deals being closed, in terms of the amounts as well. So for us as a team at Backlog, we've relied more heavily on grants and applications related to COVID, which I'd happily touch on briefly. I think that's been a positive outcome, actually. So we, for instance, in the UK, have an initiative called Innovate UK, which specifically is for technology and product development that helps during the pandemic. And to give you the context of us, so if you think about our story, so we are helping people with bad backs at home. If you link that back to COVID, there's quite a clear correlation because we are obviously in lockdown in many parts. People are unable to oftentimes aches and pains, and they might even be hesitant of human contacts, given how easily the virus spreads. So that was one of our key areas of the story that we told into investment. Like I think what we've seen, and also think in terms of criteria, one of the biggest questions investors are asking is, how have you adapted to COVID? Because for them, at least from my perspective, it shows them two things. One of them, it shows them resilience. You know, if the team have done poorly during COVID, which is fine, which is understandable, that may show potential gaps because, as we all know as entrepreneurs, the seas are never smooth for long. You know, there's always challenges, there's always external events that we have to step up to. That's number one. The second one, which I think could be very interesting, given the vaccines development and potential improvements in treatment, is if you pivoted to adapt to COVID, does your business model and product still work in a post-COVID world, if that makes sense? Because I guess for us at Backlog, if we think about us specifically again, right now as it stands, we are optimized for lockdown, which I know sounds unusual to say, but obviously at the same time, investors will be asking, well, what if a year from now we're almost back to normal? You know, how are you going to almost adapt again to the changes? So yeah, that's my kind of perspective. So
thank you. Wonderful. That's a great way to look at it because it is clear the next normal is the old normal plus COVID plus a significant fight between supply and demand for both ideas, but also capital. So we're back to square one. The only difference is that the backdrop has changed substantially.
yeah.
Yeah, is there a sense that there's a pent-up demand need for capital in what we thought was traditional ways?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say yes. And I think that's why we've seen competition for alternatives. Grants and the applications did were very competitive, as you would expect, you know, even in normal times. And one thing I've seen, which I've heard in terms of obviously recommendations and advice for founders mainly, is you need to start the conversations earlier, especially when we're looking towards obviously Series A, Series B, these larger funding rounds. And I think that's really interesting. And I remember seeing a tweet actually, I think it was, I don't know who it was from, I must admit, but I love what they were saying actually. And they were saying that when it comes to investors, it's obviously very similar to sales in the sense that it's heavily relationship dependent. And what they were saying was, even if you are more than 12 months away from wanting to start your next round, now is the time to reach out and start building relationships with investors, because what he says was essentially you want to be in a position where you could get funding even when you don't need it versus the opposite. And I think it's really interesting. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this in terms of founders' focuses. So I'm not obviously a founder of a business that needs investment, but what I can see that especially during funding rounds. So I know it's a bit of a tangent, but it's really interesting. They're obviously torn between their role as a CEO, which is product development, that's leading the team, helping them to stay true to their vision, versus this other full-time job, which is raising money. You know, and it's almost this irony of any traction, any progress in the business slows down to get funding, but to get funding, you need to show traction. You know, so it's this kind of catch-22. But yeah, to kind of answer that, Corey, I think what we're seeing is much longer cycles in terms of getting capital, and definitely much more competition.
Have you seen, Corey, just one question. Has there been any M&A work? Have you seen that the old dinosaurs are being cannibalized by the young, disruptive entrepreneurs? Or are you seeing still a kind of coexistence?
A great question. Yeah, it's, as with anything, a mixed bag. I think more of a coexistence, to be honest, which I see as a positive. Having said that, though, I think the speed of change and adaptability from the entrepreneurial community is far outweighs obviously the larger, more developed companies, which we all know. That's a common trend, and it's a great. I think really interesting. One of the industries that, and I'm sure it's the same in the US, is most obvious is traditional brick and mortar. The high streets in the UK have been torn apart, and it's funny because obviously the trends are so hard to adapt to, but at the same time, a lot of these companies have relied on their reputation. They've not really adapted well, to be honest, to digitization. If you try to order their products online, the UI experience is poor. It's not optimized for now. So yeah, I know I'm kind of avoiding the question, George. Sorry, yours. But yeah, I think it's a mixed bag.
I think we'll be interested in hearing about some of these stories that came out of your holiday party. Can you maybe brag to us a little bit about some of the people in your ecosystem and how they've evolved or pivoted?
So many. I honestly give the whole hour to this segment. A couple of highlights that I'd love to speak about. One of them, which I'm not saying, but I'd love to nonetheless, and that is the Edinburgh lock. This ties nicely at brick and mortar business. So the CEO of FutureX, Bruce Walker, in February. Context of Future, led company who support entrepreneurs. They have startup programs, startup events, and they have a jobs boards for startup jobs. They really are a community-focused business. And Bruce is a real leader in our country, I believe. And long story short, one of our attendees, Tom Harries, who's a good friend of mine, a really awesome entrepreneur, very product-focused, was very inspired by one of the answers that Bruce gave to one of my questions. And Bruce was essentially saying that there's never been a more important time to support the community. And it's up to us as entrepreneurs, he felt, to take the lead, because we have the skills, the mindset, the experience to make the solutions that we need. And long story short, Tom then started what is called the Edinburgh Lockdown Economy. And it's essentially an online directory of local businesses. So we're talking butcher shops, we're talking cheesemongers, we're talking eco-focused, vegan shops, who, as you can imagine, they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the website, they don't really have anything digital. And this really gave them the opportunity to get out to the community, and it gave people an easy, UI-friendly way to support these companies. So that was an awesome story. That's one of our kind of proud moments from the year for starters.
Impressive. That's really, really great.
So, thank you. Yeah, that's one of the highlights. There's not a couple. So Rob Gelb from Hay Summit is a frequent attendee. We interviewed him actually at our end of year party. To give you guys a context about Hay Summit, so they are an online events platform. So they essentially help to host conferences, any virtual event you can think of. So in terms of product, as you can imagine, they're in very high demand this year. And some of the numbers I've seen are just remarkable, I think. And happy to be corrected on this, that in terms of attendees across all the events they supported with their products this year, they had over 2 million attendees. And I think it was close to maybe 5,000 events. I might get the numbers wrong, but for all intents and purposes, very impressive. And they are growing very quickly. I believe has at least doubled this year, if not more. Story, and I think for me that really speaks for the opportunity that actually COVID has presented. And I think, I guess all three of us, I believe, are quite positive people. We always look out for the new opportunities. And yeah, I think for me that just speaks to the fact that yes, 2020 has been a bad year, but if you look in the right places, there's opportunity everywhere.
You mentioned talent briefly. Now, is there a larger talent gap because of some of the innovation and growth in entrepreneurism, or is that shifting at all? Where talent's coming from? Universities, are the enrollments where they typically are?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. So there is a talent gap, at least from what I understand, in Scotland with tech specifically. And it is interesting. I'm not sure how it is in America where you guys are, but these industries that are tech focused are still not really seen as popular amongst the younger generations. A lot of people we still see applying to law, to medicine, to maybe biology. There's not really a big impetus on computing science, at least from what I've seen. But having said that, there's a real focus on lifelong learning and encouraging people to actually consider a career change. And in Scotland, we're very fortunate. We have some really incredible companies who are supporting this. So for instance, Code Clan is a great example. We had the CEO, Melinda Matthews, on last month, one of our events. And essentially what they do is they will train people in coding mainly, as you can imagine from the name, but alongside that, loads of tech-specific skills. And I think given the high turnout rate, the infrastructure they built, that's really awesome. But yeah, to answer the question, yeah, there's definitely a tech shortage, and I think this is really interesting because what COVID has given us is obviously the opportunity to focus more on remote working. So we're less limited by location now, because you could work anywhere in the world, really, I believe, for most roles and do the same job. So that's been really interesting. We've now, at least as a country, started to say, well, actually, could we hire somebody from London or somebody from Birmingham or other cities to work with a team based in Edinburgh? And the answer would be yes, absolutely. And to kind of answer the question in a second point, the government actually, and I know the UK government gets a lot of bad rep, which is probably fair, to be honest, for most of their decision making. But having said that, in the jobs field, the talent field, some of the initiatives have been very proactive and quite impressive. So for instance, there's a Kickstart scheme, and this is essentially keeping young people in employment, so 18 to 24 years old. And the government will actually give you all the money you need to hire them for, I believe it's 6 months. Again, happy to be corrected. Either way, it's a good period of time. So you actually get access to free talent, which is incredible. And I myself have applied for the nutrition business, so I'm hopeful to have somebody to support me. So yeah, it's a really interesting topic, but I think we're managing well.
I think one of related to talent, especially for you, the issue of the EU and how closely tied talent was particularly there. Is there any kind of discussion on what that looks like in your community as we over into 2021?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yes, there has actually, and two sides to it. Obviously, talent being number one. The other one, which I'll come back onto in a second, is the high number of immigrants to Scotland who have started incredible companies. I want to come back to this as a really important point, but yeah, there's been some concern, and I think that anything that changes such a long-standing relationship with Europe is worrying, to be totally honest with you. Having said that, there may be an opportunity to look further, look closer to home and look to obviously upskill more UK talent itself. But I'm a strong believer in diversity, and I'm saddened actually at the prospects of companies not having access to the same diverse fields of talent. To be honest, but with that said, in the same way as the pandemic, we had to adapt, and it's not a great situation, but I guess we have to stay positive about it. Yeah, the second point, and this is something that I'm fascinated by actually, and I'm sure is a big topic in America, and this is people who immigrate to the country and then start a business. And in Scotland, we're grateful to have so many epic big names, and we actually had an event in, I believe it was October, and this was diversity focused, and it was all about the different faces, so to speak, of entrepreneurs in Scotland. We have a very diverse community, which we're proud of, and a big part of this was immigration, and we were saying, well, if you think about it, so many of these big companies that have been started, the potential new ones in future, how many are we missing out on because of this Brexit situation? So yeah, interesting times, but we'll see what happens.
Corey, I have an observation and a question for Declan here. Declan, some of the large tech companies out of Silicon Valley have given monetary stimuli for their employees to move out of the area. Over the last month or so, the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, and Goldman Sachs are looking to leave, respectively, New Jersey and New York. And the reason for that is clearly remote work works, and it is not a kind of looked down kind of experience. It's profitable, it makes sense, it's healthy, and it enhances family life. Citibank even gives a 1 month holiday to all executives if they're willing to take it, salaried holiday. What is clearly happening is that we will see the opposite of urbanization in the traditional sense. And we are also seeing an enhanced movement of human capital. In this sense, I don't know what the dynamic in the City of London or London itself has been, but I think that the Scottish, so to speak, infrastructure is not only robust, but could benefit significantly from this skill migration.
Nope.
To hear my question?
Yes, we got most of that. Sorry, I think.
Okay, sure.
It'll be. But I hope you can hear me okay as I'm talking now. But yes. So yeah, obviously speaking about London and obviously close to home in Scotland, the trends of remote working, I'm fascinated by it, I must say. There's an entrepreneur who's originally from Aberdeen in Scotland called Chris Hart. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. So he runs a company called First Base, sorry, get the name right. And they essentially support companies with the physical products they need to help their teams at home. So it's essentially a directory of, let's say, desks and chairs and infrastructure to support teams. And he's a real thought leader in this area. I follow him on Twitter and LinkedIn, and yeah, I'm sure he'd have some great thoughts on it. But yeah, I think from my perspective, yes, I think that's quite a big trend. And I think that even as a team now with Backlog, we've started to appreciate just how effective we can be at home. We've obviously had to, the last 5-6 months, work entirely remotely. And to be really honest, from a personal point of view, I've preferred it. I think the space in the mornings to be distraction free is very important to me. I do enjoy that. We use Microsoft Teams. Speaking on a Microsoft Teams call is, for all intents and purposes, I believe, just as good as in the office. And even in terms of restrictions ending, our plan was to go into the office 1 day per week on Mondays to just get a bit of human interaction, to obviously align as a team, to maybe have a few more meetings. And then Thursday to Friday, we'd be working at home. So I think that's quite common. I've seen more and more now, especially for the early stage companies who obviously have a much smaller budget. The need to get an office is no longer the case. And one thing that's really interesting that I'd love to see happening as a trend is any money saved from office rental being put back into the employees. And this could be training, this could be well-being, which obviously I'm massive on as a nutrition coach. This is what I'd love to see, because I think anything you invest in your team, you'll inevitably get the payback.
Cool. George, any last questions before we move into the opportunities and direct ways that we can perhaps help?
At this juncture, we are very often, when I speak with the younger generation of entrepreneurs, those who have not had the experience of building a startup, but they're just starting, we talk about products, people, processes, and competitive advantage. And what we've discovered is that they don't get the fact that you need to maintain innovation. In other words, this constant learning, the lifelong learning, continued education, and so on and so forth, is not something that you need to do formally, but you can maintain informally. And it is required. I mean, this is why entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs, and that's why they drop out successfully out of formal education, because they learn through osmosis. They learn through doing. They learn through the village that creates the opportunity to foster the child, and so on and so forth. So in this sense, the COVID pandemic has been a bonus, an accelerator by 10 years easily of events that we saw before. You have mentioned a few of the success stories, and it is really interesting to see how the ecosystem is not even licking its wounds. It's just going forward, gung-ho. I mean, it is very positive to see this. In terms of the source of capital, the traditional sources have been supplanted to a considerable extent by government, because the government now recognizes the meaning of the ecosystem. And when I mean meaning, it is not essentially meaning in terms of a success story. It is meaning in terms of infrastructure, particularly social infrastructure. One of the things I ask the younger teams is to take a step back, and since this is the 23rd of December of 2020, to go into 2025, 23rd of December 2025. And I would like to see snapshots, personally, in 5 areas. Where do they want to be spiritually, personally, family-wise, financially, and business-wise? And by doing that, what I want them to do is I want them to focus on today. What do I need today to be who I want to be in December of 2025? When you have time, is it possible for you just sit down and think about what do you want to take Startup Grind in Edinburgh 5 years from now?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to make a note, actually, as a task to myself.
Okay, thank you.
So there, now more than any time before, is
and then in terms of connection, I hope it's not me. Can you see Corey or hear from him at all? I'm not sure if it's on my end, but
I'm hoping that as this recording is in the cloud, that it's all like each 3 of us is in high fidelity. Am I better now, Declan? Did you lose me?
Yeah.
Yorgo?
I can see you both very well.
Okay.
all right. For some reason, I can't see Corey at all. Might be myself. What I'll do, if that's okay, is I'll just refresh my page. If that's okay. I know I'll leave temporarily, but just a second.
Is this better?
Right.
Oh, he's going to refresh it now. Okay.
Hey, we're back. Sorry, Corey. I think that was my end. You disappeared for me for some reason. So.
But you can hear me better now?
Yeah, you disappeared completely on me. It must be my signal. So apologies for that.
Well, I didn't get too far along before we had that issue, and I can edit this out later. But
Yeah, of course.
what I said was that the questions that Yorgo is asking of our younger team members and now our chapter director guests is so timely, especially because people have had this last 10 months to think about those things in some direct or abstract way.
Mm-hmm.
But they probably haven't taken the time to write it down and think about it systematically, right?
Definitely not. No, it's perfect timing. I'm not sure about you, Corey, but yeah, I usually take a couple of weeks over the Christmas holidays to really go deep on goal setting, reflecting on the year, obviously thinking ahead to the future. So perfect timing, yeah. I've even added it, as you probably heard, to my to-do list. So I'll make it happen.
George, unless you have another last question for Declan.
We talked about goal setting, where we want to be. Again, one of the key areas that we are seeing here is that there is aspects of the disruption that we've talked about that are going to be permanent, and there is other aspects that are going to be transient. However, what we have noticed is that there is a gap. There is a kind of misunderstanding, especially of the new entrepreneurs, of the concept of risk and reward. And what I mean by that is they tend to look at the bottom line of numbers, whereas what we're beginning to see is that ESG, environmental considerations, social infrastructure considerations, or philanthropy or contribution, and governance, particularly corporate governance, are playing a big role. What do you see happening in this front?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah, I think that, again, Scotland, I must say, we are very proactive, genuinely, especially with CSG, so corporate social goods, if that's the same acronym. No?
The environmental, social, and corporate governance. G stands for corporate governance.
Got it. Yeah, so by the sounds of it, and obviously, correct me on this, it sounds very similar. And what we've seen as a trend, which is very positive, very encouraging, is a lot of the companies starting, young entrepreneurs, similar to myself, focusing heavily on positive impact. So much so that actually the impact they have is built into their products. So we've seen loads of examples. We've even got a new app which helps you to track the impact of that you have on climate change. So it allows you to make reductions in travel, in eating, in many of your habits that you probably don't think about. So that's a real success story in that respect. What we're seeing as well in terms of the wider ecosystem is more support for these types of businesses, which I'm pleased to say is the case. So what you're guessing at by the sounds of it, and obviously correct me as well, is in terms of risk and reward, it's the risk of the impact you have on the generally it's one of the things I'm really proud of, actually, in terms of being part of Scotland. We are very proactive on this area, and I could give you countless businesses that are focusing here. We even had many of our previous guests who in this area doing some epic work. I'll give you one example just to also keep it brief. We have Laurel Quinn from Sustainably, and they're a fintech company who they help you to donate to charity by rounding up your transactions. So, if you paid for something that was $2.65, you donate the remaining 35 to a good cause, for instance. So in terms of trends, I think we will expect to see more of this. So I think it's like anything, you need to see it to obviously believe it and be inspired by it. So I think that should be hopefully a positive cycle. So I hope that answers the question.
Sure, absolutely, and thank you for taking the time.
No problem.
I'm really interested, Yorgo, as we revisit these chapter directors that we've stepped in throughout the year. really to check in on what those trends are, specific regions that have had that 10x effect, and see where that connects for whom. That's gonna be a lot of fun. So, yeah. The last question is what can we do for you, Declan, personally, for your personal organization, for your chapter?
Thank you, Joe. No, hey, too kind by asking it. Yeah, I'd love to chat about sometime in the future, if you're happy to help support the nutrition business. The focus now is really helping entrepreneurs, and even if it's feedback on a new product idea, even if it's helping promotion, even if it's recommending partners to speak to, that'd be amazing help. It's I guess my personal project that I have a lot of passion in. But hey, otherwise, doing joint events is a massive help. It gives us great content. It gives us a chance to connect closer with you two and strengthen our relationship, and even actually in terms of our communities. I've obviously now got a real great connection with you both in the US, and hopefully vice versa. Edinburgh, Scotland's a viable place to know people as well. So that's amazing already.
The big thing that we're taking away from our Hunting for Silver Linings journey is that there is no community that's not worth knowing about, right? So I'll let George or Yorgo, I'm sorry, George, present some last thoughts while I go rescue my daughter from getting into the trash. But then, Declan, I think Yorgo and I would love to continue to talk with you after we start recording for just a few minutes, if you don't mind.
Sounds good. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, the last thoughts are, I think that the the rope walking that we've all experienced above the abyss was to some extent justified in the sense that we encountered something that we've never encountered before. But when we look over the last 8 months, 10 months, and given the fact that we're having new challenges, whether they are a mutant virus or new viruses or whatever, we feel a sense of strengthened resolve. The resilience that we've seen is compounded by the partnerships that we've built. Do you feel the same way?
Totally. No, totally. And it's that old saying, the old advice: nobody can do it alone. And I believe that. And I think that it's funny. A lot of cliches speak to community and safety in numbers, only stronger together type of approach. Yes, I honestly believe that, and I think that as a community in Scotland, I'm just grateful that we are so supportive of each other. Because there's no way that any company could have the success they've had without it. So yeah, 100%.
Thank you, Declan. Thank you for your time. I wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and stay healthy and safe in 2021. Look forward to having you again.
Thank you very much. Happy Christmas to you both, and Happy New Year too.